Norton.
And I'm Lora Zmak.
Together, we're the Material Girlfriends.
Welcome to the Inner Reflections Block of the Month program.
Now, this pattern is going to be fun to construct because not only is it a full color pattern with lots of great instructions and diagrams, that is full of information on the 4 different personality types as applied to quilters.
So you might be a red lion,
or a blue monkey,
a yellow koala,
or a green owl.
But either way, you can sew up the quilt as shown on the cover, or you can make a king size version, or any of the 3 alternate projects that we also have for you in the pattern.
So, what we got behind us, Laura?
Well, I've been working on a cream version of this one.
Oh, it's very pretty, but we have a big old hole right here.
I know, I'm not finished yet. We still have one more quadrant you could do. So let's sew it together.
Friends.
Welcome to the Inner Reflections Block of the Month program, tutorial number 1.
We're going to help you put together that first block. So a little overview, Inner Reflections is put together in quadrants. So the first quadrant is this one. You'll do month 1, month 2, and month 3. It repeats for the second quadrant, the third quadrant, and the fourth quadrant. So here's a little example. Month 1, this is the red lion block for the first quadrant. Month 2, you'll have the same block, but in different, not month 2, I'm sorry, quadrant 2.
Month 4.
And then month 7 is the yellow koala quadrant, but it's the same block, just done in different colors. And today we're going to be doing the same block, but we're going to do it in the green owl quadrant colors.
Now, most of you will probably be using the black background. Today, we're going to be using the cream background.
So just be sure to refer to your pattern and what quadrant you'll be working out of for the colors that you're going to be using for each piece.
Well, I have prepared my pieces by cutting them according to my diagrams, and we're going to get ready to sew. We're ready to start sewing. So I've already cut out my 5-inch green square and my 5-inch background square and my 5-inch of my aqua and lime, and so now I'm ready to continue with my instructions. So I'm going to draw a line along the back of my square. Now I do like using my little ruler, and I'll draw on both sides of that line, but my sister likes drawing on just one. Either way, you're going to draw a line and you're going to be sewing 1/4 of an inch on both those sides. So Lisa, let's get to sewing. So why don't you take this? We're going to smooth this and make sure it's lined up nice and pretty. I'm even going to put a pin in it. Here we go. I'm going to put a pin here and a pin here. And now we're ready to go sew this.
So I'm going to sew on the line on this one.
Yes. And I'm going to go ahead and prepare and pin this one while Lisa's sewing.
All right, so now I'm ready to trim. I'm sorry, the white thread doesn't show up very well, but we did sew 1/4 of an inch on each side of the drawn line, as well as right directly on the pencil line on that one.
There you go.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to cut it right there on that drawn line, and then we're going to press it according to the directions. So the directions show
that we're going to be pressing toward the lime on this one.
Very good.
Once you trim this one. Alrighty. I have my little ironing mat here. My iron is good and hot, so the first thing I'm going to do is set that seam. And then working with the side of the iron, I'm just going to push that seam over, making sure I have no little folds. Give that a nice little pressing. Do the same with this one here.
And then we'll do it with these.
And I am a no steam kind of girl. I tend to find that steam tends to distort the shape, especially when you're working with anything on the bias. Everybody has their preferences though. Alrighty, so now Lisa's ready to square this up. So I'm going to use a block lock. I'm a big fan of the block locks. So the block lock has a groove on the back, and what you're going to do is you're going to just find the hill of that
seam, and it's going to just lock, wrong way, it'll lock. See, now it goes to the corner. It locks right on with that seam. So I'll be able to quickly make my cut on my top and bottom, and then slide it back down to my 4.5 spot, and then trim the other two sides. But we're actually not done with our half square triangles. So I'll be trimming these in just a minute. You have a couple more triangles to make, but this time we're not going to make them 2 at a time. One of the instructions has a little square with a diagonal on it. You're going to cut 2 5-inch squares, and you're going to cut one of those squares once on the diagonal, so that you're going to end up with 2 triangles. And you're going to do the same with the aqua color, so that you're going to end up with 2 triangles. And you'll do the same, almost missed one, with the lime. So now we're going to rearrange these so that you can sew those. You're going to sew these 2 together, and you're going to sew these 2 together. How's that? That looks awesome. And it looks like we have 2 leftovers. So these 2 are left over. All right, I'm going to line these up and take them to the sewing machine. And while you sew these, I'm going to go ahead and trim these squares down to 4.5 inches. Alrighty. Now, if you don't have a block lock, not a worry. They're just a fun little treat. Nice little tool for monkeys. You're going to find your square that has a diagonal. You line that diagonal up with your diagonal seam. You find your 4.5-inch mark. Make sure you sort of split the difference. And then you're going to use a flat hand, not a spider hold, a flat hand. And you're going to trim with your rotary cutter the 2 sides, and then flip that square around, line up that diagonal, line that bottom edge with your 4.5 inches, and then finish trimming the 2 edges. The goal is to get this seam right at corner to corner. You don't want it slightly off. Now that we have our half square triangles all made, you're going to arrange them as the order that is in diagram 5A and 5B. So this is my 5A. Remember, I'm using a cream instead of a black. And of course, yours is going to be red if you're making this for the first time. So when we align it, we're going to align it, and you're going to ask yourself, what's the point? There's a point down here, and there's a point up here. So align those points nice and perfectly. And if there's any easing that needs to be done, you're just going to give it a little tug as you sew. You'll do the same thing with these 3 units. Align and sew. And then, oh my goodness, we have an extra one. What do we do? Don't worry, we're going to save this piece for the next page. All right, so I'm going to sew these up, and Laura's going to show you the next step in step 6.
In step 6, I've got my pieces prepared and ready to roll. So in essence, we're going to step 6. We're going to draw a diagonal line on the wrong side of the line. So here's my line piece. I've drawn a diagonal line, and I'm going to lay my line piece right on top of my turquoise. So this is my line piece here, and here's my turquoise, and I'm going to copy my diagonal just like in the diagram. So I know that my line is going to go from this corner up. I'm going to sew right on the line. Now, last time we sewn on both sides of the line. This time I'm going to sew right on that line so that when I have it all pressed and ready and trimmed away from the back side, this is what it's going to look like. So I like that one. I'm going to put a pin there so I know that it's ready to roll. Now my next one is I'm going to take that turquoise. So here's my turquoise piece, or aqua, and I'm going to sew it to my background fabric. Now again, my background's cream, but you may be sewing with black. I'm going to put a pin on this one. I'm going to sew right on the line for this one. And then my last one here, I have my green rectangle, the long one. Here's my background fabric. I've drawn my line right on the diagonal, and I am going to align that just beautifully. Put my pin in there. I'm ready to sew right on the line for this one. Now I'm going to sew, and then I'm going to press, but we're going to skip on to 7A while Lisa sews those down for us. In step 7, we're going to build a couple more units. So we're going to take our line, Here's my line. I've drawn my line on top of that so you can see that nice and close. Here's my background. Again, your background may be black. My background is cream for this one. I'm going to align it exactly the way it is in my picture. So I'm making sure that I've got it going exactly the same direction. I'm going to put my pin in it. This one is ready to be sewn. And then here's my last little green rectangle. Here's my background piece. I'm going to make sure that my diagram, again, is following, my line is following my diagram. So I'm going to align those pieces nice and beautifully. I'm going to put the pin in, sew that one, trim it away, press it up, and we'll be ready for our next step. Lisa has sewn right on my lines, so I am ready to do a little auditioning. So what I like to do is I like to take my triangle and pull it up to make sure that it's going to cover before I trim away those fabrics. So I do a little audition to make sure it's going to be nice and square. Oh, I like how all of these are looking. So I'm going to go ahead and trim away my excess. So we're just going to trim our 1/4 inch away from those lines. And now I'm ready to press.
All right, now that we have all those pieces assembled, we're now to number 8. Arrange the pieces like the diagram. So this is like putting together a puzzle. Now remember, our background is cream instead of black, but arrange your pieces in the same layout as in your pattern. And then you're going to start sewing pieces back together. So the next step is to sew this side unit to that rectangle or the half square triangle. And then from there, you're going to sew this piece on. And then you're going to press as the arrow indicates. Then you're going to sew this piece onto this. And you're going to sew these 2 pieces together up here. And then you'll sew this piece onto this unit. And then lastly, this piece onto there. So we're going to go ahead and sew these units together. And then we'll be ready to sew on our last pieces, which were those half square triangles that we made in the very beginning. I've got all those units sewn together, and now I'm ready to add on the last 2 pieces. So that half square triangle unit that we created on the previous page, that's going to get sewn onto the bottom, and then the other piece is going to get sewn onto the side.
Oh my gosh, that's looking awesome.
Pretty good. Okay, we'll get that sewn and pressed, and then your block should measure 12.5 inches. All right, I got my unit sewn. So I had sewn my pieces that were my puzzle for this top portion. Then I sewed on my rectangle, or my half square triangle rectangle that I had made on the previous page, and then the last unit was sewn on, and then we pressed as the arrows indicated.
It looks awesome.
It looks great. So this should now measure 12.5 inches, and we can go ahead and put it on the wall with the other pieces. See?
That looks awesome.